There was a time in WWE when wrestlers not only waged war with each other in the squared circle, but various locations all around the arena backstage. So naturally, with wrestlers taking the fight outside the ring, backstage areas were included into WWE as well as WCW Wrestling Games. Just to note, we are only looking at playable areas, so areas in season mode cutscenes do not count. But let's look at them all as WrestleGamia looks through the evolution of backstage areas in wrestling games. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video and share it to all your friends who might be interested in watching this weird but interesting video. Remember, if the game is not on the list, you couldn't go backstage to fight there. WCW Mayhem. This was the first game ever to include a backstage area. It was just an empty room with at times 2 weapons, and the areas would change at random from a bathroom to a boiler room. It was nothing special, but to be honest, this was a landmark game for including such an option. WWF SmackDown. Now this truly was a backstage with multiple areas including a kitchen, boiler room and big hallway. You could even interact with some of the set pieces on the side. For example, if you Irish whipped your opponent into a vending machine, a drink would fall out. Also in the kitchen, if you whipped them into the cooker, you could get a cane-like pyro fire burning up from the stove. Not only that, but there'd be a parking lot with an ambulance parked outside with a stretcher ready for use. WCW Backstage Assault. WCW Backstage Assault was a very poorly received game as the entire game, believe it or not, was going through one backstage area to another, going further up the ranks in a gauntlet style. Now to be fair to the game, there was a good variety of backstage areas at least, as wrestlers went one-on-one in the restroom, television studio, the parking lot and locker room, trashing everything in sight. WWF Royal Rumble. WWF Royal Rumble was originally an arcade game until they ported it over to the Sega Dreamcast. It only had a few modes, including the Royal Rumble, where a massive and unheard of at the time 9 superstars could be in the ring at once. However, appearing backstage wasn't easy as it could only be triggered at random points in the game. The lights will suddenly go down and the wrestlers will randomly appear backstage. This could be in places like a kitchen, hallway or boiler room. ECW Anarchy Rules. This is the only ECW game in history that included a backstage area. Granted, it's 1 out of 2 games that ever made release, but players could wrestle in a backlot. This was a space based on the backlot of a large building. The space is large and it's a concreted area surrounded by fencing and brick walls. With there being no ring, certain moves could not be performed due to lack of corners or ring ropes. Players can still perform diving attacks from the top of the trash can or a fence. Strangely enough, there's no commentary and you can barely even hear the crowd. The area is pretty bland and it gets pretty boring to be honest. WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role. Released only a few months later after the first installment of the SmackDown series, WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role extended the number of backstage areas, creating a huge atrium where you could even enter a restaurant and fight there. Other places included an office, a courtyard and a bar. WWF No Mercy. Long considered one of the best wrestling video games of all time, WWF No Mercy for the Nintendo 64 allowed players to fight in 6 different backstage areas including a bar, boiler room, hallway, locker room and parking lot. Interestingly, the box art reveals there are 10, but to date, only 6 have ever been found. WWF Betrayal. Now we're not sure if this one should count as it's technically a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but in all fairness to the game, there isn't a wrestling ring in sight as you try to save Stephanie McMahon. Then again, there was no ring for WWE Crush Hour, but that was limited to vehicular combat in an arena. WWF SmackDown Just Bring It. SmackDown Just Bring It was the first WWE game to be released on the next generation of consoles, the PlayStation 2. With the transition of now being able to create the game on a more powerful console, Yuke stepped their game up with its backstage areas, as instead of just a simple courtyard, they include New York Times Square with cars even driving past. These backstage areas were huge and fans were eager to see how Yuke's would step up their game in the next installment. WWE SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. So if you didn't think that was realistic enough, well, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth has you covered as this time, wrestlers can fight in the subway and actually hop on a train to get to Times Square for further brawling.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! What in the... is that Rhino? I was resting! I was resting, Rhino. My beard fell off again because I didn't have the beard set on this outfit. I didn't assume I was going to get hit in the backstage area by the man beast and get gored. What the blue hell, Rhino? Just
eliminated. Eliminated.
WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain took backstage action to a whole new level. Areas were larger and had various interactivity. You could even run on a treadmill to boost up your momentum and obtain a finisher quicker. You could shove your opponent into a locker, enter a small size Hell in a Cell with destructible roof in the loading bay, ride the Undertaker's motorcycle while your opponent is stopping you on a forklift. There's even a damn helicopter you can ride and much more. To us, Backstage Areas peaked in this game. WWE SmackDown vs Raw. SmackDown vs Raw released over 2 years later and kinda took a small step back in the genre as the backstage areas felt limited, as there was technically only one backstage area you could go to, and that was only when you played the backstage brawl mode. Wrestlers couldn't just simply walk backstage anymore. This was also the first game to introduce the parking lot brawl match, made famous from the John Cena and Eddie Guerrero match on SmackDown in 2003. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2006. The next game just upped the ante tenfold. It had an excellent roster, decent mechanics, and simply polished up everything that was wrong with its predecessor. The backstage area was relatively the same but had 3 different areas to fight in. The first being the usual backstage of an arena. The parking lot brawl mode made a return, but now players could fight in a bar room, with many different interactions including whipping your opponent into a jukebox, pool table, and 3-point shootout, as well as the bar itself. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2007. SmackDown vs Raw 07 was the first WWE video game to hit the next generation of consoles on the Xbox 360. SmackDown 07 was the first game to have a hardcore area where wrestlers could per se fight in the crowd. Well, actually it was an area that had scaffolding where wrestlers could climb and jump off, a few weapons were scattered around, and a table was set up. Backstage areas were also updated and included more insanity, like knocking someone off atop a fire truck. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2009. So there have been parking lot brawls and barroom brawls. What's next? Oh yeah, locker room brawls. Wrestlers can now once again take it to the locker room where there are more environmental attacks. The gorilla position is also back. It was a regular sized backstage area with a trash can for use and a table to put your opponent through. Just take the snacks off it first. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2010. In this installment of the game, backstage areas have been increased 3 to 5. Not only have they increased the number of areas, but also include a lot more interactivity. Back to the good old days. WWE SmackDown vs Raw 2011. The following year, Ukes overhauled the Road to WrestleMania mode as players could now free roam in the backstage area. The problem was you could only interact with wrestlers and fight in one specific area when they allowed you to. The game included new areas like a GM office. WWE 12. Backstage Brawl? No, this time THQ would rename the mode Free Brawl, and WWE 12 boasted that there were 40 hotspot KOs. However, only around 12 animations could be done, so this got a little redundant.
No one home for that one. How do you deal with the strength of Kane? And the knuckles connect.
Come on, guys. There's no need for this. Oh, man. I can't believe that didn't just knock him out.
WWE 2K15. There's a new generation of consoles, so naturally everyone eagerly awaits how THQ and Ukes could step up the backstage brawls. Well, if you bought the game on Xbox One, PC or PlayStation 4, you'd be disappointed to see that there are no backstage areas included in the game. Like seriously, the only way you could play in the backstage areas would be to purchase the downgraded version of 2K15 on both Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3. The same thing would happen in 2K16 with a simple copy and paste job.
Yes, now finisher, finisher. Woo, through the car window, through the windshield. Oh, don't mess with Dean Ambrose.
WWE 2K17. Oh yeah, now this is what we're talking about. Finally, after a number of stale one-at-a-time backstage areas, 2K17 includes a full backstage from the ring, through the curtain to gorilla position, through to the hallway where you can go to either the locker room or a GM-style office, a parking lot, and to top things off, you can see people in the background and even a wrestler and announcer doing a promo.
A nice reversal. Moves like that can upset your opponent more than hurt them. Styles Clash!
Apart from the regular backstage area, 2K19 would have a Wyatt compound to fight in. This is where two opponents would take the fight to a spooky setting of a lonely house in the middle of the woods with a few cars encircled to provide light. Now we won't say anything negative about 2K20 further, as we're pretty sure you got the point. Again, the backstage brawl has the same kind of layout, but it's the WWE Originals Bump in the Night pack that adds so much more. So if you're looking to recreate the House of Horrors match between Orton and Wyatt, here's your chance. But there you have it guys, the complete history and evolution of backstage areas in wrestling games. Which was your favourite backstage area of all time? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling video game content.